Now, the Morrison government is backing 6 new carbon capture projects to accelerate the development of the technology in this country in the hopes of reducing emissions. Let's go live to the Santos facility in South Australia. With me, the Minister for Energy and Emissions Reduction, Angus Taylor. Minister, thank you very much for your time. You're at the Moomba LNG operations. There's going to be $15 million committed towards that facility with Santos. How soon before we see it operating and operating effectively?
Well, it can be operating relatively soon. There's a bit more work to do, but it's a real project, and $15 million from the government, comparable commitment from Santos, and it's one of a number of projects, 6 projects, as you rightly said, Kieran, focused on carbon capture, use and storage. And just in response to your comment earlier, which I heard, carbon capture, use and storage is strongly supported around the world. It's supported by the IPCC, the International Energy Agency. Joe Biden has said he's going to double down on it. The UK has major projects in this area. We're working with the United States on technology sharing and a technology partnership covering carbon capture and use and storage. It has the potential to substantially reduce emissions, but importantly, allow us to strengthen industries like the one I'm here at today in Moomba, strengthen Australian businesses and jobs. And that is a great thing for Australia, a great opportunity for Australia in terms of our export industries, our job creation, and that's why we're so positive about it. If you look across those 6 projects, they're taking carbon dioxide
on
emissions.
How soon before it operates? Because it does sound great, it sounds promising, and we hope it works, but how soon before it works?
It can be operating very soon. All they need to do is capture that CO2 and put it back into the reserves a few kilometres from here, which have held CO2 for millions and millions of years, Kieran. So this is a straightforward operation. Kevin Gallagher is very confident about it. The economics work. They're very, very strong. And that's why it's a very real project. It'll need to be credited under our crediting mechanism, the Emissions Reduction Fund, and we're well advanced, and we expect to have that concluded by the end of this year, and that'll put the project in a position to immediately proceed. So it's very real, but there's a range of these very practical, real projects. We're seeing that carbon dioxide coming from electricity generation, coming from gas plants, coming from landfill, coming from building material factories, brick factories, extracting the CO2 and either putting it under the ground or putting it back into, recycling it back in building materials like cement, concrete, like plasterboard, and that allows us to ensure that the carbon is stored, but importantly, it allows us to support these great Australian industries. And what you're seeing here is technology in action. It's technology, not taxes.
Is there a chance that Santos can use this technology as well to enhance oil recovery? Is there a prospect that they could enhance oil recovery in the Cooper Basin, but you know, elsewhere with this technology, or do you seek guarantees that it won't be used for that purpose?
Well, there's no plan to do that here. There's a lot of that being done in the United States, and the CO2 is being sequestered that way. That's not the plan here. But look, the plan is ultimately about using technology to create jobs and create a new export industry. What we can do here is send low emissions or zero emissions gas to places like Japan and Korea and sequester that carbon dioxide so that they can reduce their emissions and create Australian jobs at the same time. That's why this is exciting, Kieran. It's an exciting technology for Australia. It's seen as an exciting technology around the world, and that's why we're backing it strongly. Now, $50 million in the Carbon Capture, Use and Storage Development Fund, which is what we're talking about here today. We've also committed an additional $260 million in the budget to establish hubs. We expect those hubs to coordinate closely with our hydrogen hubs, our hydrogen valleys that we announced before the budget. And this puts us in a position to use technology to bring down emissions and create jobs at the same time.
And absolutely. We know your focus is all about the technology, but when the Prime Minister gets to the G7 in Cornwall, he'll find leaders from the G7 countries, all of which have locked in net zero by 2050, all of which have increased their 2030 targets, and all considering border adjustments, i.e. taxes on exports or imports, potentially our exports. Is the Prime Minister marginalised before he even arrives on this issue?
Not at all. I mean, we're delivering. You know, if you look at countries like, comparable countries like Canada and New Zealand, their emissions haven't fallen since 2005, Kieran. Ours are down over 20% now, over 20%. There's very few countries in the world can boast those kinds of outcomes. Lots of people want to talk Australia down. I get that, particularly some within Australia. Well, Australia has delivered. Australia delivered on Kyoto. Many countries pulled out of Kyoto, including the United States and New Zealand and Canada, of course. We didn't, and we've delivered. We will deliver on our 2030 targets. In fact, we'll meet and beat our 2030 targets. We're very confident of that. Our goal is to get to net zero, and preferably before 2050, Kieran. That's what we want to do. But I tell you what we do in Australia is we deliver. When we say we're going to do something, we do it. It's practical, it's real. This plant behind me, we can store 1.7 million tonnes of carbon dioxide a year in a real project. We've had the chief executive here of this business saying today to the media, this is going to happen, and we're in a position to get on and do it. And that's how Australians do it.
You talk about technology, not taxes.
We get on with the job.
But you talk about technology, not taxes. The international community, though, would you concede they're talking taxes on border adjustments and things like that, i.e.
Well, no, some are.
Tariffs.
I mean, I'll pick you up on your earlier comment. And John Kerry has said the United States is not predisposed to carbon border adjustment. It should be used only as an absolute last resort. I mean, you need to be very careful about this and go to the facts. We don't want a trade war. No one wants a trade war. We are dead against carbon border adjustments. The Americans, I know, are not predisposed to carbon border adjustments, as you said. It's not correct. And so this is a very important point. If we're not careful, this will descend into a trade war, and that's why we're dead against it. The way to reduce emissions across the globe is not to tax people, Kieran. It is to drive innovation and technology, practical solutions. And I tell you what, Australians know how to innovate. We've been doing it in our industries like this one, places like this at Moomba for a long, long time. And we're going to keep doing it, and we're going to deliver, and we're going to create jobs in the process.
Angus Taylor, I appreciate you joining us live from the Santos Moomba operations there. Talk to you soon.
Good on you. Thanks, Kieran.